Chief O'Brien promised Dr. Bashir he wouldn't go kayaking again until he gave his shoulder enough time to heal. Humans are better suited to handle incarceration than Klingons, obviously. And what the heck is Section 31? Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Seventh Rule with Cirroc Lofton.
Hello, hello.
My name is Ryan T. Husk, and that was my third try at that intro. Today,
you got it.
I nailed it, right?
You nailed it.
Oh, boy, oh, boy.
You got it.
Today, we're doing a review of Deep Space Nine, Season 6, Episode 18, entitled Inquisition, written by, boy, we talk about these guys a lot, Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. Directed by, did you catch who it's directed by?
I did not.
Michael Q. Dorn.
Wow. Did you is that really his middle name? Q?
Should be, though. Probably not.
I was gonna say
Quincy. It stands for Quincy.
I was like, I never heard that before. That's breaking news.
And this was April 8th, 1998. That's a special day. I think that's when the world found out that Kurt Cobain passed away. April 8th. I think that was 1994, though. But anyway, day in infamy. How are you today?
I'm doing good. I'm doing really good. How about you?
Awesome. Actually, I think he died on the 6th or 7th, but that's when we found out it was the 8th. I remember because it was my girlfriend at the time's birthday, and that was like one of our favorite bands. And that was her birthday present, was me telling her, oh, I just heard that Kurt Cobain died. And that sucked. Anyway.
Yeah.
But this episode did not suck. And that is our segue of the day.
Yes, this episode did not suck. That's a good one. A little celebration for the Rams who won the championship in NFL. A little shout out to them, just to put that in the time capsule. So I'm rocking my blue and yellow and a little subliminals. But this episode
I love the shirt, Cirroc. Everybody that's just listening, it's an Abyssinian kiosk creation. Check it out in our description box below, abyssiniankiosk.com. That is Cirroc's sister that makes the coolest freaking stuff. And it looks like almost like an X-Men Wolverine / Ethiopian design. It's definitely my favorite of his shirts and of her creations. He's also wearing a blue hat that I don't much care for. And he also mentioned the Rams that I don't much care for. But I happen to be wearing red for the 49ers. So that's kind of sad.
All right.
But
little reminder of that.
Yeah, anyway, let's go ahead and move on past those.
I didn't expect that this would be because I knew that Section 31 is an idea that came from DS9. I wasn't expecting it in this episode. Would have been nice to have been called Section 31. That would have given me a little clue.
Yeah, but this was, I believe, this was the first time we are introduced to Section 31. So that's why it was such a revelatory episode, is because this is where we find out, there's this weird thing where we're like, what's going on? We've seen this kind of trope before. There was a Next Generation episode. It kind of reminds me of, everybody at home remembers it. It's when Riker thinks he's going crazy and there's this guy that's doing brain experiments on him. It's kind of like this. But then it takes a twist and we're introduced to this new group, this new faction. But yeah, I believe this is the first episode we're introduced to that. So that's why they wanted to keep it a secret. Spoiler.
Yes. And I thought it was, like I said, like I was along for the ride. The whole title of Inquisition kind of made me think, oh, is this going to be a period episode, or is this about off with their heads type of thing? What's going to happen in this? And so I kind of I didn't really know what to expect watching it. I did kind of have that feeling when they say internal affairs. You're always good, it's like when you hear IRS, you're like
here we go. Yep.
You're like, okay, this is serious, obviously, right? So that was kind of the thing that set the tone for me, where okay, there's an investigation on board the station, you know, somebody with specific authority to investigate is you know, parsing out the crew and trying to find the weak link, kind of how, you know, police do when they come to the scene of a crime. They kind of separate everybody and get everyone's story right away. So I thought, okay, this is going to be a good episode.
Well, here's what I thought when I saw Inquisition, and I think a lot of people are with me on this. I thought of the Inquisition. Here we go, the Inquisition. What a show! We know you're wishing. No.
You say a lot of people thought of that? I don't know.
There's, I bet you at least 20% of our live chat knows exactly what that is. That is Mel Brooks' History of the World Part 1. Isn't there a History of the World Part 2 actually finally coming out like 30 years later, or whatever it's going to be? Oh. Anyway, but I don't know. To me, it was another one of these episodes where, you know, it changes tone a lot. Like at first, it feels like it's going to be one of those court proceeding episodes, right? We've seen a couple of those. This is like with the Klingon lawyer back in the day, right? Where he was accusing Worf of whatever. And then we have another one where Odo is O'Brien's counsel on some planet or whatever. And Cardassia, maybe. So I was like, I remember thinking like, oh boy, is this going to be another one of these court proceeding episodes? But then it turns into one of those, oh my God, I'm going crazy and somebody's messing with my mind. It's all a hologram, which happens all the time in Star Trek with, you know, different plot points, but that's kind of the main theme. And then it takes a third turn into introducing this new thing. And when I was watching it this time, I remember thinking, when does Cirroc start thinking the different things? Like, when do you start thinking like, okay, this isn't real, or what's going on? Or are you just like you said, just in for the ride, just kind of watching it, and as it comes, you're just, it's just taking you there and there? Or were you trying to guess what's happening?
Yeah, I was sold on the premise of, you know, because they did a great job of alluding to episode that we had seen prior, where we saw that Bashir was in that camp with who was it? Which Klingon was it? It was Martok, right? Yeah. So we saw him in Martok. They were replaced by the changelings on the station. So we also did see a little bit of that. So they dug back into that story, which is great because it already has a foundation to it. It already something that we've worked that out. It's already part of the canon. It's like, we know that this is the things that actually happened. We know that he existed. We know that he was a part of this camp. We know that he was missing for a while. And so that was great because it allowed us to kind of hook the story into something that was already, you know, set as precedent. So when I heard that, I'm thinking, okay, maybe there was a missing time, or maybe he was implanted with some kind of, you know, device for spying, or maybe he was coerced or hypnotized, or whatever you want to say, to be an inadvertent spy, right? And I thought the idea of it being an inadvertent one was also clever, because it's like, you don't even know, right? They called it something like, he said, you ever heard of engrammatic disassociation?
Yeah. Of course I've heard of that. My word.
Right? And so he says something about compartmentalizing information, and being able to be contradictory because of that ability, and even, you know, believing you're actually telling the truth when you're not, but you actually believe you are. So they mentioned that kind of disorder, which I wanted to look up to see if that is actually something.
I know when you were just
That
saying
is-
that, I was like, boy, this episode is a conspiracy theorist delight.
Yeah,
They're like,
right?
see, I told you they do that, and that's why this guy got shot, and that's how this happened. But
Yeah.
but going back to when you were saying when they were referencing previous episodes, I also think that's why it was important for them to have what are their names? David Weddle and Bradley Thompson. You can't have, just like a writer of the week handle this episode, because whoever writes this has to have a very strong knowledge of all the previous episodes to needle and thread in these past episodes into this one, because what that does is it's verification for us. If they just kind of start saying all this stuff, oh, Bashir's a spy, we're going to be kind of like, what? That doesn't make any sense. But if they start citing specific episodes and specific things that we remember, that's confirmation for us. That's like, that's like if a psychic goes to you and says, you're going to be rich tomorrow, you're not going to believe him or her. But if they say, this is the day you were born, when you were 7 years old, this happened, when you're 15 years old, this happened, it's like confirms it. Then you're going to believe where they're going to take you. And that's what this writing does, is it gives you this verification. And then from there, it can take you almost wherever it wants to go. And you kind of have to come along with it.
Right.
But the answer to your question is, looks like you've looked it up.
I'm looking at it, and it looks like it's just a Star Trek terminology. I don't think it actually exists.
Star Trek got us again.
Yeah, they got us with this one. They added the engrammatic. Disassociation is a real thing.
Sure, yeah.
But engrammatic dissociation is not. But it's great because it really sold me on it. I was like, oh, this is interesting. So he might have this condition in which he's able to, so it's kind of, they sold me on that.
And talk about, sorry, but talk about the long con. If the Dominion is like, okay, we're going to capture this guy, we're going to replace him with the changeling, then we're going to let him escape 5 weeks later, have him programmed, have them find him, and have the Federation find him, rescue him, and have the changeling get away or get killed or whatever it was. And then we've implanted him. I'm like, geez, you guys really put a lot of, if that really was the Dominion plan, that is detailed.
Yeah, it is detailed. It would be, but it didn't seem too far out of the realm of believability for me, because of those little planting my memory in a space in which I do recall that he was in this, internment camp and captivity. But I also thought it seemed like Bashir was being, when he came to the conclusion and he said, yeah, we talked to Martok and he said you were gone for 7 days. He's like, I'm sure it was only 5 days, so that it created just enough doubt for me, right? Just enough for me to say, okay, well, where were you? Is there a 2-day missing in the timetable? And were you during those 2 days, probably not to your knowledge, but being coerced into being a spy for the Dominion?
Yeah, and I wonder where that goes. Like, if he were to be missing 2 days, because my other thought on this was, he's got this genetically enhanced brain. Where are they going to fit all this extra compartmentalized stuff? Like, his brain's already a mishmash of all these other things. I don't know. The whole thing seemed far-fetched, but then at the same time, they did their due diligence to plant the seeds of doubt in our minds for the first time we're watching it. You think, okay, well, I guess maybe it is possible, and I do want to point out Siddig, Alexander Siddig's acting in this, because I loved when he would make his choices to go big. And you remind me of one was when he said, like, when they were saying something about 5 to 7 days, he says, "No, I don't remember it because it didn't happen." And he got like, he came right at him. And I loved, and he did that 2 or 3 times in the episode where he went from a 2 to an 8. You know what I mean? Like he would just kind of just turn it on them. And as usual, I remember thinking, like, I wonder if that was, direction from Mr. Dorn, or if that was his choice. I think that was probably, an actor's choice. And
I think that's his choice. Yeah, he has a certain way of delivering things like that. I think I've seen that kind of style in his performance for now as we've been watching. And then the thing when he ordered the food and the room service came to the door, he was like, I'm famished.
And he said cheers to the guy. He's like, cheers.
Yeah. I know, it's just so he has his own style of delivery, which is something that all of us do, it essentially, right? That's when we get to know the characters, get familiar with them. Those are the things we kind of the quirks and that we're looking for that give us that comfort about the character. But yeah, he has a way of delivering lines. The other line I thought was good when he was being interrogated, and he says, "Were you alone? You were in solitary for 7 days."
Oh,
He's
yeah,
like,
that was great.
Were you alone? And he's like, "Was I alone in solitary? Let me think." It was like,
I'm going to correct you there. He said solitary.
Oh, solitary. Yeah.
Solitary.
Solitary. Yes.
But yeah, his delivery there was perfect. It was smug. It was sarcastic. But he wasn't over the top, because that's one of those lines that as an actor, you can read that line and be like, oh, that's a funny line. That's a good, funny line. I like it. And your instinct a lot of times is to really hit that line hard to make sure that the audience hears it and laughs. And you know what I mean? Like, it's a funny line, so you want to really milk it. And he didn't do that, which is good, because the fan, the viewers, we get it. We hear it. You keep it subtle, and it's funnier that way than if he goes like, let me think. Boy, oh, well, was I alone? And so, whatever it is, like, I like the way he kept it subtle, but he still kept it dripping with sarcasm the way Julian Bashir can do. I thought, that was very well delivered.
Absolutely. It was like you said, he didn't choose to go into the over the top in that exact moment. He actually went lower and kind of just went baseline. And I appreciated that choice in that moment. I thought it was the right choice, and it just resonated more, because like, you're supposed to be the genius over here. You can't figure out if I was alone in solitary.
And by the way, as usual, how happy were you when you're watching an episode, 20, 30, 35 minutes in, and then, oh, there's Weyoun. Well, let me go ahead and lean forward in my seat and see where this takes us. Suddenly, this thing goes in a whole new direction. So it's definitely cool to see Weyoun.
Yeah. And before we get into Weyoun, because I think that's a whole, like, another section and topic of discussion.
Yeah, the 31.
I would say that the other thing they wanted to add that brought credibility, because we mentioned the fact that we know that Bashir and Martok were replaced by changelings and imprisoned. But we also were given the reference of the episode where Bashir helps to genetically modify individuals, right? And he gets them to have access to Starfleet data so that they could predict the probability of the war against the Dominion. And that was when Bashir kind of confronts Sisko and tells him, you have to surrender. And I thought that was another good callback. Yeah, that was another good callback, which once again added this extra layer of validity to the claims that were being made, in my opinion.
Yeah, and the other one they did, I believe, was when he helped the Jem'Hadar, or tried to help the Jem'Hadar on that planet break their addiction. And so all these are like verification. Now that one is very understood and excusable. He's a doctor, he's helping people. That's nothing. But yeah, the one that you mentioned where they say, oh, and you gave that information to the Dominion, it makes us think back and say, actually, that was their plan. They were planning on doing that, but then they were stopped. And then it makes you think, well, that totally works. Not only did they reference that episode that we know, they also said something about it where you're like, well, they certainly could have. That was their plan. They were planning on doing it. Maybe he just was like, okay, yeah, I won't do it. You guys go along. I'll be right there in a second. And then he just types in his little thing and meets up with them later.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I would have added, because I was expecting to hear this and it didn't come, but I would have added something from the writer's perspective to layer that story just a little bit more and raise the stakes. And that would be that one of those genetically modified people that he was in, teaching and engaged with, if one of them somehow was caught doing something later on that we didn't know about, and he references, that guy that you worked with, the guy who was trying to kill everybody. Well, he ended up going to the Dominion and giving them classified information that you gave him access to, and so that would add for me, like, oh wow, so maybe maybe they were working together, just to add a little bit more of intensity to that.
Well, and we all know who it would have been. It wouldn't have been the sinister guy. It would have been the party hat guy. It would have been the guy. He would be like, oh, okay, I'm just gonna go get some more punch. And he'd be like, dude, I'm typing into my friends right now. Here we go. This is gonna be fun. We are saving lives. Let's celebrate.
Yeah, exactly.
What was his name?
And so what was that guy's name?
Dummy or something? I don't remember.
No, but it was. That would be another just layer of like, oh, that guy did this, and now I'm going to be like viewed as an accomplice because I gave him access to certain information. That was another kind of where I was going in my mind when they brought that up. But it was great because the line that what was the internal affairs character name? Sloan. Well, isn't that like such an 80s like a TV show, or like Sledgehammer? Or,
I remember Sledgehammer. Yeah.
Sledgehammer.
There was, back in the day, there was like Sledgehammer, Remington Steel, like those guys.
Yeah. Max Headroom. Just like it seems like a name from that era of television making. But
hey, we have to take a really quick break, but for everybody at home, while we're on our break, Cirroc just brought a nice piece of trivia up. Max Headroom. How is Max Headroom connected with Star Trek? A lot of you might know it, a lot of you might not, but Max Headroom is very powerfully connected with Star Trek, and we'll give you that answer if we remember on the Seventh Rule. We'll be right back. Well, hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Seventh Rule. We just had a nice chuckle because Cirroc kind of called me out. I'm like, I don't really know the answer to that, but I do. I'm pretty sure I do. But first, we have the trivioids. Here they come in no particular order, actually chronological order. Bashir is presenting a paper at a medical conference. Chief O'Brien promised Julian Bashir he wouldn't go kayaking again until he gave his shoulder enough time to heal. There's a security breach aboard Deep Space Nine. Bashir's breakfast is hot buttered scones, some jam, and some red leaf tea. But Bashir accidentally gets Worf's breakfast gach. Humans are better suited to handle incarceration than Klingons. And what the heck is Section 31? there weren't a ton of trivioids this time, because this was more like, no B story, no extra frills. It was just like one storyline. And just to answer that bit of trivia, the actor that plays Max Headroom, I don't know his name, but everybody, you can look it up on IMDb. The actor that plays Max Headroom was also in one episode of Deep Space Nine. Again, you can look it up, but it's the episode where the guy is coming from the future to, quote, observe the people in the Enterprise, because it's some historical thing. But really, he's not an observer. He's from a different future time in his time ship, where he's actually stealing stuff and selling them as artifacts. So everybody remembers that episode, and they're all yelling what the episode was called. I don't know, and I don't remember the actor's name, but that's the same actor. And a lot of people already know that. Anyway, what were you saying?
Yeah.
I hope you didn't forget after all that extra shit I threw at you.
No. I a little bit, yes. But I was talking about the name Sloan, but I was saying something about. First of all, I thought he was good at what he did. I thought his performance was great. The actor's name is William Sadler, and I had to go look him up because I felt like I had seen him on things before, and some of the things that I've seen him on were Die Hard 2 and
right.
Yeah, he's been in a few things that we've all seen, and he has that kind of that great look on him where he could play this almost villain type of chisel to his jaw, and he kind of has that villain look. So I thought it was great because you weren't sure if he was good or bad. But we were going to talk about Wei Yun, and I thought that Wei Yun also, as soon as you see Jeff Combs, you're like, oh yeah, this is going to be, another moment where you get to see him delightfully torment somebody, and he does that in this one. And I thought, again, credit to the writers, Bradley Thompson and David Weddle, for writing this in a way that I thought was believable. When Wei Yun comes in and he says, yeah, we go through this all the time, and it's so difficult because you always resist. And,
so
it was so well written, I thought, because that was believable. And then when he mentions, for example, the scones, your favorite thing, and it like that was a key word or a trigger word for their, deprogramming him, for him to come out of whatever stupor they have him in. I thought, oh, that's clever. Here goes. He's using the trigger word. He's using something to confirm that he knows intimately things about his, choice making, and, something that you wouldn't know necessarily if you just met somebody. You wouldn't know what their favorite thing to eat breakfast is. So I thought another way that the writers validated the idea that they were trying to sell, which is, no, this guy's really a spy that's been coerced by Wei Yun and the Jemadar, and he's working for them. They sold me all the way up until there. I was like, oh,
nice.
Like I was starting to question. I'm still questioning it, right? So you mentioned earlier, at what point did you start to question? I was believing up until the moment when he says, when he sees O'Brien and he's like, what happened to your shoulder?
That's
so
when it all clicks,
it clicked for me when it clicked for him. So we both clicked at the same time. That's when I knew what I was seeing wasn't really what I was seeing. Yeah.
And that's perfect writing. They want you to come along for the ride, but then something triggers a thought, and then you start backtracking in your mind. You start going, wait a minute, that's right, they did this and that was weird. And maybe the reason all this stuff was weird is because it wasn't real. No wonder. My favorite line that Wei Yun said was, he said, I can see this is going to be one of our more difficult sessions. As if, we've done this a bunch of times. Oh boy, this is going to be when you're feeling feisty. But the line that I really liked that was just preceding the moment where O'Brien kind of reveals that this is all a ruse, is when everybody's just turning on Bashir, and everybody's being so rude to Bashir, like, Dax is like, don't even touch me, or O'Brien says, don't touch. There's just all this stuff. Everybody's being like out of character, right? But the funniest line, I don't know why, was when Worf goes, he says, "You have run out of excuses, Doctor." I'm like, damn, calm down, Worf. Worf's like all like fussy and like butthurt about it. Like, anyway, that was funny, because once he realizes that it's not real, and then you look back at these lines, you're like, oh yeah, why were they acting so ridiculous? Normally they wouldn't be all like hurt about it.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite moments when Worf says that. I'm like, dude, chill out. What are you so
prune juice, bro? Damn.
Yeah, so there was a clue. I mean, even Sisko was like, get out of my sight. Something. It was just so abrasive. And I'm like, wait a minute, didn't you guys just save his life? Like,
yeah,
So that's when I started the cracks in the story started to reveal itself to me, and I started to say, oh yeah, maybe this is something else than what I'm perceiving it as. And so yeah, I was along for the ride. There were a few moments where the choices that I thought Bashir made were a little bit not the right choice, in my opinion, because sometimes it seemed like, you mentioned how sometimes he'll elevate his voice, right, and deliver these lines. But there was one where I felt it was a little bit too flippant, and it didn't give me the kind of importance of how, what he was facing, right? Like, I didn't feel like he was on the verge of facing like, court-martial or arrest, or there wasn't enough there based on this response where, Sloan comes in and he's like, yeah, I'm going to take you. You're under arrest or something like that. I'm going to take you and I have orders, we're taking you to Starbase 53. I think that was the moment, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And he says, we're taking you to Starbase. And Bashir, you have no right to do this, Sloan. And it was just like too much of a throwaway, in my opinion. I thought he could have went lower on that one, because it felt like a little flippant. And
interesting.
Yeah, so there were moments where I didn't like some of the choices. For the most part, I liked most of all the choices he made. That one moment, I was like,
yeah, it's true, because like sometimes on an episode like this, you really just have to make choices, because it's not 100% obvious where the highs and where the lows. I mean, that there's mounting stress, but basically the entire episode is mounting stress. So where do you do the highs? Where do you do the lows? And that's sometimes you do something that people like. Sometimes other people go, I would have done it lower here or there, and that makes sense. And again, I'll also always wonder, what if Sid practiced it one way, and then Dorn goes, just give me one where you do it like this, and Sid goes, but that's not how I practice it. Oh, just give me the one, right? And then and then he uses that one take, and then forever Sid's watching that going, I wanted to do it my way. We never know. But these are the kind of things I always wonder, like, what was that? Because you're going to do it a bunch of different ways and a bunch of different times, and all you can do is hope that they pick the one that you liked best. But sometimes a director is just going to be like, well, this is the one I'm going with, and other times they're going to pick something that you didn't think was best, but then when you watch it, you go, oh shit, they're right. It's better that way. It works, So I'm always curious about this kind of stuff, and we get to find out sometimes, but most of the time their answer is, I don't remember. That was 25 years ago, man. Why do you care?
Yeah. You want me to remember which the 3 takes?
Yeah.
I did on that one day were the ones that they used, and which one they threw away. So yeah, it's almost impossible. It just and I guess I didn't like it at the time because I didn't know what the outcome was going to be, right? So after at the end, it didn't matter as much as at the time, because at the end, then I realized, okay, so now he's playing. He has this whole, as the actor, has the whole script in his head, and he's trying to pace which, at what point to reveal, at what point, and so in this case, where it's like a twist on a twist on a twist, it's hard to keep track of, which of the places to reveal, and which ones are exposing the actual story. So,
or maybe in the script there's just an exclamation point on that line, so he's like, well, I guess I gotta yell it.
right. But I think there was also some other interesting kind of philosophical things that they were bringing up in this episode as well. I can't hear you. Are you?
Sorry, I muted myself to clear my throat. Very professional move with an unprofessional result. So I was just going to bring that up. What you were saying is the philosophical things, and I want to hear what you have to say. I want to see if it's the same thing.
So essentially, the big thing, I think the big takeaway of the story was once Bashir realizes what he's dealing with, once he knows that it's Section 31, and that comes to kind of in the discussion, he starts to question the existence of this organization, the functions of it, and the legitimacy of their practices or their protocol. And I think that's where the idea, the discussion philosophically of is this right or wrong, or because we know these kinds of things exist in our own governments or in the world in general. Of
course,
there are these black op, nobody knows what's going on type of organizations that kind of operate with this kind of impunity. So I think that discussion is something that was brought up by Bashir, questioning them, right? And I thought that was something that ultimately it was good that the writers introduced that concept as well. They were like not saying that it was right per se, but they were saying it was necessary.
Right, which leads into exactly what I was going to say, which is that main theme in a nutshell is the ends justify the means, right? And when and I believe they even said that exact thing, the ends justify the means. And that's one of those things that I feel like is one of those themes that just keeps coming back in people's lives, and we revisit it. And I don't know if anybody's ever come to a concrete solution or decision on that. Do the ends justify the means? Like, if they say, hey, if you grab a gun and shoot this guy in the head, you will save 10 lives. So if the ends justify the means, then you've just saved 9 lives, basically. You've prevented 9 deaths. But you just killed an innocent person, and you made yourself a murderer, and you played God in a way. So there's just like these weird, philosophical stories where there's one about like if you're on a train track and it's headed to roll over 2 people, will you turn the wheel and kill the one person instead of the 2? Or stuff like that, and everybody, I think, has a pretty strong opinion. And I feel like the obvious answer is to say, well, yes, or if you lie, in this case, you do something, hidden and covert, and you lie to people and you manipulate people and you do horrible things because you believe in the big picture. At the end of the day, the world, the galaxy, the universe overall will be better for it. So does the ends justify the means? I still don't know.
Yeah, I don't think there's a clear answer on that. We talk about the greater good and those things, sometimes are left to probability, sometimes left to the eye of the beholder. Like, I think you're the bad guy and you think I'm the bad guy. So it's like, so it's a lot of gray area in there. And the thing that jumped out to me was when he said, we don't, because Bashir says, does Starfleet know about this or something to that effect, right? And he says, we don't submit reports, or ask, or ask approval for specific operations. We are autonomous.
Mm-hmm.
And I guess what bothers somebody about that idea is that some autonomy, something that exists outside of a checks and balance system that we designed where everybody's accountable, right? So it's like we have a check and balance system usually in, at least in this country, where you have this branch and that branch and this branch, and there's recourse. It's like, well, I can sue you or I can appeal and I can go to this court and go to the higher court.
Everybody's keeping each other in check. Yeah.
Right. And if there's a autonomous group that has no check and balance to it, where there's nobody that can say, hey, you're doing something wrong, or you're going to be punished for that, or we'll take you to court and we're going to fight this out. Like, there's no actual check on it, then it becomes, it could become potentially a problem if you don't have, for example, an alignment of the same kind of ideals that Sloan is looking for in Bashir.
Yeah.
So you would have to have a person that is literally, infallible or well tested and proven to not, be corrupted by power or corrupted by their own motivations, financial gain, whatever. It would become a real selfless person, which we see Bashir has passed all those tests and he has a loyalty to Starfleet. We see that. And you would need that kind of loyalty, but you can also see how that kind of a power could be abused.
Right. And we do actually, to my knowledge, only have one example of this autonomous group in the country or the world that does not, abide by any rules and does not do reports to anybody. And that group is CBS. Just kidding. I have no idea what that means.
No, but
that was a big buildup for not much.
Yeah, I thought it was going to be bigger than that. No, I can say though, but I thought the line was great that Sloan gave, which is like one of those head scratcher kind of lines, which is the riddle or the philosophical question to be, pondered upon. And that is, we violate principles in order to protect them. And it's like,
I bet you there are a lot of people in the world, like in law enforcement, in government, in the military, that believe that sentiment, and when we hear it said out loud, it sounds pretty suspect. To violate the principles, to uphold the principles or protect them. Okay, I get it. That's ends justify the means, right? But then at the same time, like I said, then you're playing God. You're judge, jury, and executioner that they mentioned. It's like, and that's why they say about law enforcement, they say, no, you enforce the law. You are not above it. And what these guys are saying is they're kind of above the law because they choose when the law should be broken in order to protect it or whatever. It's this weird, semantic game that they're trying to play. But when you say it out loud, it sure sounds pretty bad. It doesn't sound, honorable.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost, it's a paradox. We have to kill people in order to save lives.
Yeah.
Like, okay. So it's like, okay, how many people and how many lives? And then you start to get into like,
yeah. And then who are you to decide? Who are you to decide who lives and who dies?
Well, this is an old theme in the world, and not just to governments and organizations, but it just in general, mankind has this innate urge to kind of play God and want to be God-like. And this is just another example of that kind of, this is an organized version of it, but it's still the same kind of affliction that mankind has always had.
And by the way, we only have a couple minutes left, but I just realized this should also be mentioned. This is the first episode that created the group called Section 31, which will now have an entire Star Trek series based on it. So that makes this episode pretty monumental in the grand scheme of things, because there aren't very many episodes in Star Trek that plant a seed that 25 years later will turn into an entire series. So that's pretty cool. That's pretty big. And it would be interesting to know who came up with that idea, where that exact idea came from.
My guess is Bradley Thompson and David Weddle. That's my guess.
Oh, really?
I mean, that's my guess. And I'd be actually interested to know if they, because we talked to a few of the writers about being compensated for stories later on.
Yeah.
And I wonder if this would fall under that umbrella. If, you know, if you revive Section 31, is that something that I get kind of, not me, but the writers or creator of it, do they get some residual compensation for that?
Ooh, dog, that could be a lot of money forever.
Could be. But, you know, and the other thing is the other thing, I don't know how much time we have, but is my teddy bear. There it is.
Oh my God, that is perfect. Wow. and the other thing is, here's my teddy bear.
Yeah, because I like the
tie.
Teddy bear. Yeah, I love the teddy bear. Uh-oh, here it comes, ladies and gentlemen.
You know what time it is, damn it. It's time for the nitpick. Mr. Worf. If somebody comes on your station saying that he is with internal affairs and demands that everybody gets locked in their quarters and nobody can talk with each other and they change everything, you ask for an ID. At least ask for it, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I thought that was strange too. At the end, they're like, there is no existence of a, Sloan in internal affairs or something like that. There's no, I'm like, well, why didn't you answer to him? You know? Yeah,
okay.
I mean, first thing I would do is say, can I see the paperwork or something? You know, does this come from the top?
Also, before we go to our free-for-all, Jake Sisko guesses the IMDb score.
I'm gonna say this was about a 7 flat.
7 straight
points.
up. A flat
Straight
7
up. 7 up.
All right. So you're going to find out on the other side on the free-for-all. But before we go to the free-for-all, here they come. Fast and Furious. Very special thanks to Carmen, a.k.a. say it with me, Skillet. TJ Jackson-Bey out in Missouri. Bill Victor Arucan.
Arucan.
Yvette Blackmon. Homer Freezy out somewhere in New Yeezy, who, by the way, told me that somebody thought his last name actually was Freezy. It's Frizzell. Eve England out in Wales. Dr. Anne-Marie Segal. Titus Mohler. Timothy Baum. Darlena Marie. John Mann. Rex A. Wood. Dr. Mohamed Noor. Tierney C. Dieckmann. Joe Balsarotti. Michelle Melendez. Marcia Classic Schreier. Anna Post, we learned. Anna Post.
Anna, yes.
Jenna Appleton. Perfect Strangers. Larry Appleton. Wasn't that a character? Larry Appleton. Balki Bartakamus.
Jenna Appleton.
and Dr. Frank Sobozhensky, and a very special thanks especially to Dr. Susan V. Gruner. Thank you all very much for playing with us.
Thank you.
Stick around for the free-for-all, and we'll be right back on the 7th rule.
What's up, everybody? Welcome to the free-for-all. I'm your host, Cirroc.
Aww.
And I'm joined here by a very special Tierney Dieckmann, the board queen. We also have Dr. Mohamed Noor, TJ Jackson-Bey. We have Dr. Marie Segal.
She giggles.
Dr. Gruner. We have the villainous Golduscott in the house.
Hello.
Mr. Homer Frizzell, representing the Section 31.
Well said. Maybe.
Maybe. The beautiful and lovely Melissa Longo.
Hi.
And of course, we have Eve England out in Wales.
Stormy Wales.
Out in a stormy Wales today, I guess. And of course, we have Mr. Ryan T. Husk. Oh,
He said my name.
yes,
Man,
yes, I did.
All right. That was awesome. A+, of course, as expected. I think we have a lot to talk about today. We didn't even really get a chance to talk. We got so much into everything in this episode. We didn't end up really talking too much about William Sadler. We mentioned him. By the way, very quickly, I mentioned that Cirroc mentioned Max Headroom, and I said that the actor that plays Max Headroom was in that Next Generation episode, but I couldn't remember what the episode was called or what his name was. I looked him up. The actor's name is whatever it is. The character is Berlinghoff Rasmussen. And
I think it's Frewer.
And the episode is A Matter of Time. And the actor's name apparently is Matt Frewer. Yeah.
Who's amazing in Orphan Black also.
I love him in Eureka.
Orphan is the new black. So the other thing is Cirroc guessed this episode to be a 7 flat. Does anybody have any other guesses that doesn't already know what it is on IMDb?
Actually, don't know.
I think it's much higher.
Oh, I did not 10 it.
You didn't?
Yeah,
Isn't
Marie.
it 8?
Wow. Which probably means I said a default 9.
7.6? I don't know. I'm gonna go with 7.1.
No.
He's feeling Cirroc.
I'm gonna go 7.8. I think has to be it there.
It was kind of a little weird. I'm gonna say 7.6.
Wait, Cirroc said 7.5?
7-0.
7.0. Wow, you
7-0.
$1.
Yeah.
On the money.
It's because he wasn't
TJ
in it.
botched me into my bid with a 7.1.
Yep.
Thanks, TJ.
He's a gamer.
What I do.
So the answer is 8.3.
Wow.
Right.
What?
That's
that's
impressive.
That's shocking.
I
I'm
think it's
super shocked.
Anne Marie, you actually brought it down.
I actually didn't. I usually don't vote if I don't give it a 10. I don't want to bring it down because I love Deep Space Nine so much. But
By not voting, you brought it down.
yeah, well, that's true. Also, now that makes, there is a spin-off directly related to the show in progress.
It's one of the most
We just
important Star
mentioned
Trek shows episodes ever.
Mhm.
And do you know
Right.
that they were thinking of Martin Sheen first
Yeah.
for Sloane? That's crazy to me.
Ooh.
Nice trivia.
Mhm.
Well, I have a
I
little
mean,
nitpick
but I
I'd
love
like to
this
start
one.
with.
Oh,
Oh.
nitpick. Here it comes. Put on your nitpick sun hat, Sue.
I have one.
Gosh, my sun hat's out of reach.
I usually don't like to pick on the science part of it, really. I know we do, but it's science fiction, so I don't like to pick on that too much. But in the very beginning, well, not the very beginning, but really close to the beginning, they had those people running down the hall with the rifles.
Yep.
What was that all about?
Diversion,
Yeah,
manipulation.
they didn't say. Yeah.
I think
We
that was it just to
never
make you
found
feel
out what happened. Those guys, stand aside. Bashir was on his way to go talk to the guy, and he had to stand to the side. And I thought, okay, well, what happened? They never addressed where were they going?
Well, that was
think
part of the
it's the same.
simulation, wasn't that was
Yeah.
part of the deception to kind of ramp up the urgency and make them
Maybe.
feel nervous. Like, what's going
Right.
on? I don't know. Something's
be.
going on in the station.
It
I don't
was-
know what it is. They think I'm a
Yeah.
spy.
Theatrics for Bashir's benefit so that it gets
Yeah.
him in that frame of mind.
Is Frame of Mind the episode on Next Generation that was kind of similar to this? Actually, that's what I was trying to
It's
remember.
the Riker
Yes.
one.
Perfect.
I love that episode.
Me too.
Ryan.
All right.
Ryan.
Not
likes
Ryan,
it,
not
so
Ryan that much.
I don't remember. I haven't seen it in 30 years, but I remember thinking like,
Well, I
Really?
like it.
Oh.
See, I felt that way too, and I watched it again recently and understood it a lot better and was able to appreciate it a lot more.
That's
Well,
that's when
That's why it
he's
was
in that.
nominated for the Lappies.
That was when
Right,
he was
very
in
nice.
that the play/prison
Yeah.
type
Mhm.
thing.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
well,
That was all
Melissa,
right.
since you said the golden phrase of the week, Frame of Mind, what did you think of this
I
episode?
want a Pee Wee Herman like,
I think it's an interesting episode. It's very subdued. But it's an interesting episode, and it brings in a different element to the Federation, and it makes them. It reveals them to be not as squeaky clean as they appear to be. So I like that element of it, and I like the intrigue of it. Talk about gaslighting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. The actors are good, and there was more to say, and now I'm drawing a blank. But yeah, it was interesting, and I like the way that they showed Bashir's powers of deduction, like the way he tries to figure out, and finally he knows his friends so well because the relationship has been built up so well that he knows when O'Brien is not O'Brien. So
Or when Worf goes, "You have run out of excuses, Doctor." He's like, "That's not Mr.
oh,
Worf."
that's good.
but it sounded just like him.
Yeah. I love your Deep Space Nine one-man show.
You should hear Cirroc's Worf. It's pretty badass.
No, it is not. No, it is
Oh my
not.
god! Remember when Cirroc did the Worf impression on Center Seat on History
Yep.
Channel? It was
Yes.
like the best thing ever.
Yeah. It's canon now. It's official. It's been on
Totally.
TV.
Oh man, I did that, huh? Jeez.
Yeah, it's so good. I was like, that's our guy.
He did it again recently in a recent recording
Yep.
that
Yeah,
will
sometimes
pop up.
the Worf bug bites me. He has a
Yeah.
very interesting delivery. That's extremely comical sometimes because
Yeah.
of the way he says things.
Yeah, surrounded by wharfs. It was funny because Ryan did one too.
That should be like an episode, just a whole bunch of Worfs. Like there's a
Perfect.
fistful of Datas,
Yeah.
a fistful
Yes.
of Worfs.
Right?
Well,
Sign
Eve
me up.
England out in stormy Wales, thank you so much for staying up so late out in the British Isles. What did you think of this episode, by the way?
Yeah, so I totally forgotten how much I like this episode, because I do tend to forget episodes quite easily. And I actually did read the companion before I read it, I watched it, which I think was actually gave me a completely different perspective and made me appreciate some of the subtleties of what they were doing in the show. Because for me, Section 31 is just the coolest thing that Star Trek ever did. So we have to have big hats off to Ira for introducing it to us, and I just wish they'd done it sooner. But better late than never. What was really interesting in the companion is they talk about how there's no establishing shots in the episode, obviously to show that Bashir is in the holosuite. Yeah, and I wouldn't have noticed that, obviously, had I not known that, because it's not really obvious. And you only get the final establishing shot of DS9 when Bashir gets back to the station for real. And then the only time you see the Defiant, you only see it on the little view screen in the Dominion ship. So I thought that was just a really, so as soon as I read that, then I was kind of just, what other things? They must do other subtle things in the show. And what I particularly liked when I was watching it, it just felt so tense to me. And there was just such an air of uncertainty and paranoia right the way through. And I think part of that, I was halfway through, I thought, do you know what? I just feel like I'm watching Psycho. You know, when you have that really unsettling music in Psycho in the first part of the film, and it just feels horrible because you just know something bad is going to happen, but you don't know when. And I just found that the sort of themes that they were doing in the music, and I'd like to go back and watch it again, actually, to sort of really do that. So I don't know if anyone else noticed that, but they use a lot of strings. They use a lot of sort of repetitive notes, bass lines, then going up to very high-pitched notes. And I just loved how the whole thing gave you that sense of paranoia to really reflect how Bashir is feeling, and aligned with then how the writers just perfectly brought in all those bits from the different episodes that we saw. So was it Hippocratic Oath and Purgatory Shadow, all those things. And then you start thinking, oh yeah, well, that was a bit strange. Why was Bashir acting like that? And you can see where this argument may have come from originally. And I think when you look at it through that lens, it's actually really, I think I just got so much more out of this episode rewatching it in that context. And then how, just Section 31 is just fantastic. And I think you couldn't have introduced them better, with their sort of Nazi uniforms and all of that sort of stuff. It was just, I really, really like this episode. I completely agree with that higher IMDb rating, actually for those reasons.
Homer, she just called your jacket Nazi looking. Just FYI. Hot takes from Eve. She said Golden Cot is her favorite character ever, and Section 31 is the coolest thing in Star Trek.
Yes.
She is devil in disguise.
Get this jacket from Muji.
Not Germany.
Not Hugo Costa.
Okay. For a second, I thought you were saying Moogie wrong.
Muji.
Well, Homer Freezy out somewhere in Germany. Your thoughts on this episode?
So first off, for Cirroc from Aaron, I just want to move aside a little bit. And perhaps you can see.
Wow.
Oh, nice.
Hang on, wait, stay there.
Unconfirmed
bird.
Nicely done.
Wow, this is A+ work.
That is incredible work.
He just drags it along there. Yeah.
He literally fires off like 15 torpedoes when he does that too, right?
I'm out of
here. This is the greatest thing ever.
Sitting in real life for this episode.
I enjoyed this episode, I think, more than most, and it's one of those ones where it's just the A plot. There's no B plot, and it was interesting meeting Sloan and having someone that's completely convinced that he's right and doing everything he can to make this person confess to something that they didn't do. So it was a lot of fun. And, I do like the Section 31 outfits at the end. Yeah, it was good. I thought the William, is it? No.
Sadler.
Sadler.
Thank you, Sadler. I thought he was great. I know I'm not going to give away any spoilers. poor Julian didn't get to go to a conference again, but he actually did end up going somewhere. Yep. Yeah. I just really, I enjoyed this one a lot, and I agree with the IMDb rating.
Wow. And that was
you
the
guys talked
coolest
me into it, and I
background.
tended.
Good job,
Oh,
Emily.
thanks.
That was the coolest background I think anybody's ever had.
Yeah.
And it totally defeats mine. I was
That
so proud of mine.
Is
The
so
rom-com shot.
No, that's
That
That's
is
so
cute.
sweet.
Honesty's too much. Right?
The next fan
Still
relationship.
definitely impressive.
It's a romantic comedy. Still
It's
friends.
funny how 400 years into the future, doctors' conferences are still in exotic tropical countries. That doesn't change. They're still
Yeah.
meeting in Hawaii every year.
Yeah.
TJ Jackson-Bey out in stormy Missouri. What's new with
Yeah.
you?
Ice stormy, maybe. A little bit. Got a little bit of sleep today, but it's not bad. As well, man. I enjoyed this episode. There's so many elements I think that are familiar. But first of all, it's doing what DS9 does best, and that's showing us, kind of that. I mean, we watched, to this point, the original series and the Next Generation and some Voyager. And, we have this very high ideal of what the Federation is. And I'm laughing at Homer. We have this very high ideal of what the Federation is. And then we see that, okay, it's not exactly, all that we thought it is. There's kind of this shady, seedy, darker deal that goes on behind the scenes that everybody doesn't know about. And that's what DS9 does for us. It shows us that the universe, the galaxy of the 24th century isn't as rosy as we thought it was. That there's some other stuff going on. But I enjoyed a lot of the scenes and a lot of the moments in this episode. I thought Sid's performance was excellent. Like Eve was mentioning, the musical overtures usually happen when you're just looking at Bashir's mind churning and turning, trying to figure out, what's going on. And I thought Sid played those moments very well, and the music was a great compliment to his performance. And I thought, the elements they brought in from things that we've seen before. We mentioned Frame of Mind, where Riker's trying to figure out what's real. But there's also The Mind's Eye, where LaForge gets kidnapped on the way to a conference.
Conferences are
Don't go to conferences.
Don't go to conferences. But, there's also kind of a callback moment to Future Imperfect from the Next Generation when Riker figures out, what's going on and starts going off on everybody like, Data, you can compute faster than
Yes.
Jordan, you would have had this fixed by now. So all of this isn't real.
Earmuffs, Cirroc.
Spoilers. I'll forget that by the time we
Yes.
get there. Don't worry.
So great episode. I loved Sid's performance, and I also agree with the IMDb rating, although I guess a 7.1.
change that right now.
Yeah, as a team together. Dr. Sue Gruner, did you agree with the IMDb rating, or were you shocked it was an 8.3?
No, I always think they're rated lower than they should be. But I watched it twice, a couple of days apart, and I enjoyed it very much. I love Sid's performance. I loved it when he was sarcastic about being in solitary confinement. Yeah. And I loved that at one point, the first time I watched it, I thought, there's a good chance. It sounds like he could be guilty. And then I thought, well, there's no way. I know he's too loyal, but that you go back and forth like that, I think is great television. And I thought it was pretty good. So good that I watched it twice.
Mm-hmm.
I admit it was to figure out what the heck was going on with the guns in the first.
With that CGI pen.
Just to see what you missed.
What did I miss? bears.
Wow. Well,
The
Golden
teddy
Scott,
bear.
you are
I love
Eve
this little
England's
teddy bear.
favorite character. By the way, when you guys watched
There
this
you go.
episode, Cirroc doodled the teddy bear that you just mentioned, Sue.
Oh,
Let
Kukalaka.
me
Kukalaka.
see. Let's see.
Oh, Kukalaka, yeah.
Kukalaka lays
Kukalaka.
down. You know somebody's been tossing the joint. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was
Love
like
that
the
song
clown from
About
Poltergeist.
sloppiness.
Oh my
There it is.
God.
Yeah.
And
Kukalaka.
you totally
So
captured his
cute.
mouth.
That is so cute.
Yeah, I
That
put a
is so
communicator
cute.
on him. I thought he needed a communicator. So I
Cutest
did.
Love
doodle
it.
of all time.
You know what?
Transform
One
it
other
out,
thing
man.
I want to say.
Yeah.
That apartment on Deep Space Nine of his was really cool. His quarters.
CMO, yeah.
Oh, I want that Kukalaka on a t-shirt.
So
Get it.
cute.
Then you just
Uh,
love the bit when he just goes, please. I just thought that was just such a great bit of writing for his character, that because he thought the the replicator wasn't working because he hadn't said please. I just thought that was so funny.
How about that teddy bear?
Polite.
On a shirt, you have that teddy bear dressed as Q when he had like the poncho and the band, and it says La Kukalaka.
Oh my
No.
gosh.
That was an elaborate one.
That
Very
would
good.
be very
That-
funny. I don't care what any of you say. So,
That's a
Golden
hell of a
Scott, by the way,
character.
what are your thoughts on this episode?
I
Oh
don't
my
know
God.
anymore, man. I
Is
just got wiped
Kukalaka a
out.
legacy character in Picard?
No, you know,
Old
like the song.
Kukalaka's got gray in his beard.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
know. Sorry.
Kukalaka might make an appearance on Lower Decks now that we keep
La
talking him up.
Kukalaka.
Man,
La
totally.
Kukalaka.
I want to buy a
This gal
Kukalaka
gets
like
it. The
teddy
cock-
bear.
Yes.
We're all gonna get some really weird Facebook ads from talking about it this much.
Save us, Scott.
I love William Sadler. I can't say this enough. I don't know if anybody saw Tales from the Crypt Demon Knight that he was in. It was I want to say it was like,
I was totally thinking about you when I
80s.
saw he was in that. I was like,
Oh, he's
Scott
so good.
Fenton's going to be all over that.
I love that movie. I love that movie, and I loved him, and he played the sheriff in the Roswell TV show way back.
Cool.
Jim Valenti. He had a little bit in the very beginning of this episode. He had a little bit of that character in him. I felt like I immediately trust him when he's in it. He's got something about his face and just the happy smile he has the whole time. I immediately trusted him, which he did bring in. I agree with Eve. Probably one of the coolest things about Star Trek ever with Section 31, because I think to have a utopia, we've talked before about how the original series comes out. It's like, yeah, there was a bunch of crap happened and the eugenics wars. And yeah, and now we're in a utopia. And how does it get that way? You know, how does it transition from that? And I think that personally, I feel like people that are willing to do certain things that might not fit that lofty mindset to get it there and to keep people safe could very well be what got it there. And I know we've got no spoilers, an episode coming up. It's going to ask us that same question.
Mhm.
But I love that. I love it. It brought this foundation for Section 31 in that we're going to see more and more of. And obviously we're going to see a lot of it, you know, whenever that show ever happens, if it does ever.
Mhm. Yeah, and we are definitely going to
speaking of-
see Kukalaka in Lower Decks. That's going to happen. What were you saying?
Kukalaka
TJ?
in Section 31 too. Who knows? Maybe he got tapped while he was in there. That was the real reason he was at the station. In Kukalaka.
Kukalaka.
I was gonna
TJ
say, speaking of spoilers, Golden Scott, there's a line in this episode that I promise to recall next week.
Ooh,
Oh.
teaser.
I know
Like
the
that.
line. I know exactly the line.
Tierney, but did you like
Yeah.
this episode or did you not like it?
And also, don't say the line.
I'm not gonna say the line. I thought about saying the line, but as soon as you said that, you stopped me from saying the line.
No spoilers.
But upon rewatch and research, especially, I think I love this episode. I'm gonna pull up my notes here just to make things easier and look like I'm staring off camera. Anyway, I do kind of love this episode, and even more so now, not just with it being the introduction of Section 31. I mean, you kind of don't think about it that this is where it starts once you've seen through the series a number of times. Thank you, Ira, by the way. but stemming from a potentially very different episode, if you look at some of the background trivia here, that it could have been Bashir dealing with an orbital parking ticket situation, that he goes to a planet to possibly, help the whole planet with some disease or something, and he comes back, finds a parking ticket on his runabout that's just kind of floating in orbit, and has to deal with like a planetary DMV bureaucracy situation, akin to The Trial, which, no offense to, I think it was Michael Piller who pitched it, sounds miserable as an episode. But upon hearing planetary DMV, I think Douglas Adams, who is very important to me, and somehow just the arbitrary connection between something like that to, we get to Section 31 from that becoming this huge thing, dark, dirty necessities of what has created the Federation that we get in Earth, that we get now, and all the dirty deeds done dirt cheap.
There it is. Someone had to say it.
It's kind of brilliant, and I love it for all the little things in this episode, all the big things. And given its overall story and Michael Dorn's direction, drama, mystery, its entertainment, I find it very well balanced with everything that it's got, besides, a few little low-hanging fruit nitpicks. But let's see, trying to think of what I kind of picked out of there in here. Few things there, such as, like, if you're Sloan in this situation and Section 31, just like the Federation making first contact, you can examine the background and on paper of your potential candidates, and even make covert observations till you're blue in the face, or end up like alien ostrich hands William Riker, and trade sexual favors with alien BB Newworth to get out of an alien hospital.
First Contact.
Keep it classy, number one.
Written by Mark Zipper.
First Contact Day.
But eventually you're going to have to test the resiliency of your candidates, and I can absolutely see Section 31 pulling something like this. And it's messy. I mean, it's real messy that they do this. They don't know what to expect with his genetic enhancement, how he's going to react to the neural attachment, how he'll handle the basic things that they're going to do with the sleep deprivation. But I mean, they start simple with that: sleep deprivation, hunger, misdirection to seed paranoia, the armed security running through the corridors. They gaslight the hell out of him. They tweak his quarters. They tweak faux Brian to,
Oh, Brian, very good.
Have him.
Oh, Brian.
He's been asked questions for hours, and you notice how nice the attending officers are, and then their personalities go from niceties to hostile, to really hostile when they put him into the cells. The one lady rips off his comm badge. You won't be needing this anymore, which just makes me think of the Denise Crosby tweet about Rick Berman.
Oh yeah, that's right. We remember that.
Yeah, Google that one if you don't know it. It's great.
Yeah, recent.
Relatively, yeah. And then he gets back to Sloan, who begins to twist his words and antagonize and belittle him, and he gets Bashir to start back talking, which bad move on Bashir's part, but I mean I get it. He feels like crap. And I love this this horrifying concept of extreme cognitive dissonance, this compartmentalization, that, honestly, in spite of his genetic enhancements, this could be something that they have tried before. Because if you think of this more realistically, you can almost convince anyone of this in the wrong circumstances.
Totally.
Like, you're a spy, but you don't know it. Like,
right. So how could they even deny it at that point? That was the big thing.
So
we're running really low on time here. That's our fault for screwing around too much. But Sloane's last name is actually Children at Play. Mohamed, how did you feel about this episode? But sorry, Scott.
It was good. I liked the episode. I liked the episode pretty well. I mean, the one it reminded me of the most was Second Skin, which was kind of similar in the context of Kira as opposed to Bashir. The one thing which I wouldn't say I'm not even calling it a nitpick. One thing I couldn't relate to with respect to Bashir was his sheer certainty. So I mean, we're talking about how Sloane was certain. Bashir was absolutely certain that through the whole thing that this hadn't happened. I felt like if I was in his place, I'd be like, oh my God. Maybe. Can you scan me? Can you figure it out? I'd be trying to find a solution as opposed to just trying to disprove it, because I'm just less confident than he is or something like that. But there were no chinks. There were no chinks in the story up until the whole Wayun beam out scene. Everything was consistent with the story, and yet Bashir was like, no, that didn't happen. Well, how do you know? I mean, by definition, you don't know. So maybe. So I didn't like that as well. I didn't say I didn't like it. I couldn't relate to it because I would have felt different. I would have been like, let's scan me. Let's do something else. Try to unprogram me and see if it comes out. I don't just go in with
the pragmatist point of view.
Yeah. Or just some open mind, especially somebody who's kind of a man of science. It's you need to be a little more open minded. You can't just be like, no, it's this. No, that's not the way to approach it. This is a little bit of a nitpick, sort of like the picture behind you, Ryan. I don't know if you guys noticed when Sloane was in Sisko's office or quarters, or not quarters, but his little captain's office, whatever. The two guards were staying really close to each other, and facing each other. I was like, are they kissing?
They're close talkers.
Yeah,
close talkers.
Their biggest crime. Yeah.
Well, it was very odd placement. They're really close together.
There were a couple weird things about those guards, but Anne Marie,
thank you.
You are anchoring our ship here. What are your thoughts? Would you have gone along with it, or would you have been more like Mohamed?
When you hit 30 hours of straight working without sleep, that's when some sort of wall comes, and you start being having to think an hour for how to create a sentence. So I'm
I just
feel
came out of that.
would know that when you hit 30 hours, something crazy happens in your brain. So I'm I feel like Bashir would be familiar with those work hours and be yeah, I should be questioning things a little more. And then also the establishing shot thing is so good. And obviously it used to be a thing with commercials. So when I watch this episode, it stresses me out so much when I'm man, it would be so hard to know with my VCR, when to turn the video back on. Because that fitting episodes of Star Trek onto one tape was always such a stressor. And then also Odo's point at the end where he's why are you guys all shocked there's a section 31? Everybody else has it. When he says that, I'm oh yeah, great point. Why did I never think that? And then I also have to say, I freaking love when Kukulaka appears, because when I started working in the hospital, especially in you see such life or death things, it's so nice to see a teddy bear, and Bashir makes me feel so good that when that started, I had to bring my cuddly bear to come live with me. And when Bashir talked about him, I'm see, it's not crazy, it's just comforting.
Oh
Yeah, cuddly bears my age. We're BFFs.
Two bears. Wow, what a deal.
Two bears.
Well, everybody, we're gonna have to end it there. If you have your bears, send us pictures. We want to see them. Kind of.
Oh man.
Who's your Kukulaka?
That's it. Yeah, let us know. Thanks very much for joining us, everybody. You know who you are. We got to run. Until next time, give this episode a 10 if you want. And always remember the 7th rule.